Lieutenant Do-Young Kim was bored. The night shift on the bridge of the United Earth defense vessel Steadfast usually meant 8 hours of watching empty space. He sat at his workstation, checking the armor system's diagnostics for the third time that night. The ship's clock showed 300 hours when his screen blinked with an unusual reading. Do-Young sat up straight, his tiredness forgotten. The energy scanner had picked up something strange at the edge of their patrol zone near the Centaur border. "Captain Park," he called out, turning to face his commanding officer. "I'm getting some odd readings from Sector 7. Captain Hansel Park walked over to Do-Young's station. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and 20 years of space service behind her. "Show me," she ordered, leaning over his shoulder. Do-Young pointed to the pulsing dot on his screen. "The energy signature doesn't match anything in our database. It's not human, and it's not from any of the 3 alien species we know." The captain studied the readings carefully. The unknown signal was coming from what looked like a dead ship, floating silently in space. Its dark hull absorbed the light from nearby stars, making it almost invisible to the naked eye. "How long has it been there?" Captain Park asked, her voice calm but serious. "The signal just appeared, Captain, but the dust pattern around the hull suggests it's been floating there for at least a month." Captain Park straightened up and walked to the center of the bridge. After a moment of thought, she pressed the ship-wide communication button. "This is the captain speaking. All senior officers report to the bridge immediately. We have a situation." Within 5 minutes, the bridge was filled with the ship's top officers. Security Officer Jia Li arrived first, her uniform slightly wrinkled from sleep. Engineering Specialist Su Bin Choi came next, carrying a data pad and looking wide awake, despite the early hour. At 300 hours, Lieutenant Kim detected an unknown vessel in Sector 7. Captain Park began. She pointed to the main screen where Do-Young had transferred the sensor data. "The ship appears to be dead in space, but it's giving off energy readings we've never seen before." Su Bin Choi studied the data on her pad. "These readings are incredible," she said, her eyes wide. "The energy patterns suggest technology far more advanced than ours. Could it be a trap?" Security Officer Lee asked, always thinking about the crew's safety. "Possible," Captain Park replied. "But if it's not, this could be first contact with a new species. We have a duty to investigate." The captain turned to face her crew. "I'm ordering a careful approach. Lieutenant Kim, since you found it, you'll join the boarding party. Officer Lee will lead the team, and Specialist Choi will handle technical analysis." Do-Young felt his heart beat faster. In his 3 years of service, he had never been part of a first contact mission. He was an armor specialist, more comfortable with maintaining the ship's combat suits than exploring mysterious alien vessels. "We'll dock in 30 minutes, Captain Park announced. "Suit up in full combat armor. We don't know what we're walking into, so be ready for anything." As Do-Young headed to the armor bay to prepare, he couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery would change everything. The strange ship waited in the darkness, its secrets still unknown, while the Steadfast moved slowly toward what would become one of the most important moments in human history. Little did they know that inside that quiet hull, something waited, something that would test not just their technology, but the very limits of human ingenuity. The airlock hissed as Jia Li led her team onto the alien ship. Their combat boots made soft clicking sounds against the metal floor. Do-Young Kim followed close behind her, with Su Bin Choi bringing up the rear. All 3 wore standard United Earth defense combat armor, its white surface reflecting their helmet lights. "Atmosphere readings are normal," Su Bin reported, checking her instruments. "Temperature is cold but safe. No signs of harmful radiation or chemicals." Jaya nodded inside her helmet. "Keep your suits sealed anyway. We don't take chances on unknown vessels." The corridor they walked through was different from any ship they had seen before. The walls were smooth and dark, with strange patterns that seemed to shift in their flashlight beams. Every few meters, they passed doorways that opened automatically as they approached. "The power systems are still working," Do-Young observed. But where's the crew? Their helmet lights revealed no signs of battle or emergency evacuation. Everything was clean and orderly, but completely empty. The silence made Du Young's skin crawl even inside his climate-controlled suit. Su Bin stopped suddenly, holding up her scanner. "Captain, are you getting this?" she asked over the radio. "These markings match records of VEC technology." Back on the Steadfast, Captain Park's voice crackled in their helmets. "The VEC? Are you certain?" Everyone knew about the VEC. They were one of the most advanced species humans had ever heard of, but no one had ever met them. All anyone knew came from abandoned sites and old ruins found on distant planets. "The patterns match perfectly," Su Bin confirmed. "This is definitely a VEC ship." Jaya raised her hand, signaling the team to stop. They had reached a large door at the end of the corridor. Unlike the others, this one remained closed. "This looks like the cargo hold," Jaya said. "Su Bin, can you open it?" The engineering specialist moved forward and studied the door's control panel. After a few minutes of careful work, the door slid open with a soft whoosh. The cargo hold was massive, easily large enough to fit 3 shuttlecraft. Most of the space was empty except for a single object in the center of the room. It sat on a raised platform, glowing with a faint blue light. "What is that?" Du Young asked, taking a step closer. The device was about the size of a small car. Its surface seemed to ripple like water, even though it was clearly solid. Patterns of light moved across it in ways that hurt Du Young's eyes if he looked too long. Su Bin approached it carefully, her scanner held out in front of her. "These readings are off the charts. The quantum signatures are like nothing in our database. The energy patterns suggest." She stopped talking suddenly, her body going stiff. "Su Bin," Jaya called out. "What's wrong?" "This is a weapon," Su Bin whispered. "The most powerful one I've ever seen. The energy readings suggest it could destroy everything within a 5 light-minute radius." Do Young felt his mouth go dry. "That's bigger than any human weapon ever made." Jaya immediately backed away from the device. "Captain, we need tow." Before she could finish, the device made a soft humming sound. Lines of bright light appeared across its surface, and a voice filled the cargo hold. It spoke in perfect Earth standard, but something about it made it clear it wasn't human. "Unauthorized presence detected. Security protocols activated. Quantum displacement device armed. Detonation sequence initiated." Red warning lights began flashing throughout the ship. The 3 humans stood frozen, watching as numbers appeared in the air above the device, counting down from 6 hours. "Captain," Jaya's voice was steady despite the situation. "We have a serious problem." Captain Park stood in the Steadfast's emergency meeting room, looking at the holographic display of the VEC ship. The countdown timer showed 5 hours and 43 minutes remaining. Around the table sat her senior staff, their faces showing different levels of concern. "Can we move the device?" she asked. Su Bin shook her head. "No, Captain. The quantum field is extremely unstable. Any attempt to move it will cause immediate detonation." "What about disarming it?" Jaya suggested, leaning forward in her chair. "The technology is far beyond our understanding," Su Bin replied. She pulled up a diagram of the device on the main screen. "The quantum signatures are constantly changing. One wrong move could speed up the countdown or trigger an instant explosion." Do Young watched the shifting patterns on the display. Something about them seemed familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. He stayed quiet, trying to remember where he had seen similar energy patterns before. "How far can we evacuate?" Captain Park asked, her voice steady despite the situation. "The Steadfast's maximum emergency speed would get us about 3 light minutes away," the ship's navigator answered. "But that's not far enough. The blast radius is 5 light minutes." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Even if they ran at full speed, they wouldn't survive the explosion. And they couldn't just leave. There were 3 mining colonies within the blast radius. Millions of people would die. What about calling for help? Someone suggested. Captain Park shook her head. The nearest Earth defense fleet is 2 days away. We have less than 6 hours. Su Bin was still studying the device readings. The quantum field is generating some kind of ripple effect. It's like waves in a pond, but in space-time itself. If we could create a counter-wave pattern. She stopped suddenly as Du Young stood up. His eyes were wide, like someone who just remembered something important. The waves, he said. I know why they look familiar. Everyone turned to look at him. Du Young wasn't usually someone who spoke up in senior staff meetings. As an armor specialist, he typically just listened and took notes. The quantum field patterns, he continued, pointing at the display. They're similar to the ones our combat armor uses to maintain structural integrity. Su Bin quickly pulled up the armor specifications on her datapad. She compared them to the bomb's readings, her eyes moving faster and faster across the screen. He's right, she said finally, looking up with surprise. The frequency patterns are different, but the basic wave structure is almost identical. Our armor uses quantum field manipulation to strengthen itself against damage. Are you suggesting we could use our armor to stop a bomb that can destroy everything within 5 light minutes? Jaya asked, sounding skeptical. Not exactly, Du Young said. But maybe we could use the armor's quantum field technology to create a containment bubble. If we can match the bomb's wave patterns and create an opposite field, we could contain the explosion. Su Bin finished, already doing calculations on her pad. Captain Park stood up straighter. How many suits of armor do we have aboard? 37 full suits, Du Young answered immediately, plus spare parts and backup plating for repairs. Would that be enough? The captain asked Su Bin. The engineer bit her lip as she ran more calculations. Maybe. If we modify every piece of armor we have and arrange them in exactly the right pattern, we might be able to create a strong enough containment field. Might? Jaya asked. It's better than nothing, Captain Park said firmly. And it's the only plan we have. Lieutenant Kim, Specialist Choi, you have my authorization to use all armor resources. Everyone else, prepare for emergency evacuation if this doesn't work. As the meeting ended, Du Young looked at the countdown timer again. 5 hours and 20 minutes remained to turn basic combat armor into something that could contain the most powerful bomb humans had ever encountered. He hoped he was right about the quantum patterns. If not, they would all be dead in just over 5 hours. The armor maintenance bay of the Steadfast had never been so crowded. Du Young and Su Bin had taken over the entire space, with dismantled combat suits covering every available surface. The countdown timer on the wall showed 4 hours and 15 minutes remaining. The quantum field generators in each suit are too weak individually, Su Bin said, looking up from her work. She had dark circles under her eyes, but her hands remained steady as she modified another piece of armor plating. We need to link them together somehow. Du Young nodded, not looking up from the circuit board he was rewiring. He had maintained these suits for 3 years, but he had never tried to change their basic functions like this. The suits are designed to work together in squad formations, he said. Maybe we can use that. Captain Park entered the maintenance bay, carefully stepping around the scattered armor parts. Progress report, she asked. Su Bin straightened up, stretching her tired back. We think we can modify the armor's squad link system to create a larger quantum field. But there's a problem. What kind of problem? The captain asked. Du Young put down his tools and turned to face her. The quantum field from the bomb is incredibly powerful. To contain it, we need our field to be exactly opposite in every way, like 2 waves canceling each other out. Can you do it? Captain Park's question was direct. Maybe, Su Bin answered, but the field has to be perfect. Even a tiny mistake in the arrangement could create a weak spot, and if the field fails anywhere. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what would happen. At that moment, Jaya entered the maintenance bay. She had been helping evacuate the nearest mining colony. just in case the plan failed. 2 of the colonies are refusing to evacuate, she reported. They say they won't abandon their equipment. Captain Park's face hardened. Then we can't fail. How many more suits do you need to modify? Do-young looked around the room. We've done 23. 14 more to go. But modifying them is only the first step. Getting them arranged correctly around the bomb will be even harder. Su-bin pulled up a holographic diagram. It showed the bomb at the center, surrounded by a complex pattern of armor plates. The plates have to be arranged in this exact pattern. The distance between each piece has to be precise to the millimeter. And once we start, we can't move them again. Why not? Jaya asked. Because the bomb's quantum field is already affecting the space around it, Su-bin explained. If we make a mistake and try to fix it, the disruption could trigger an early detonation. Captain Park studied the diagram carefully. How many people do you need to place the armor? At least 6, Do-young answered. And they'll have to work in perfect sync. The captain was quiet for a moment, thinking. The lives of millions of people depended on their success. Finally, she spoke. I'll help place the armor myself. Choose 4 more crew members you trust to work carefully under pressure. Captain, Jaya started to protest. Regulations say you should be on the bridge during an emergency. Regulations also say we should abandon ship when faced with certain destruction. Captain Park replied firmly. Sometimes we have to trust human judgment over regulations. The countdown timer blinked. 4 hours remained. Get back to work, the captain ordered. I want those modifications finished in 2 hours. That will give us 2 hours to set up the containment field. And everyone. She waited until they all looked at her. Double-check everything. We only get one chance at this. The cargo hold of the Vex ship felt colder than before. Do-young checked his suit's temperature gauge, but it showed normal readings. The cold he felt came from fear, not the environment. The countdown display showed 2 hours and 30 minutes remaining. First piece in position, Jaya reported. She stood back carefully from the armor plate she had just placed. It hovered exactly 10 centimeters above the floor, held in place by modified gravity anchors. Confirmed, Su-bin said, checking her instruments. Quantum field activation successful. Second piece ready for placement. Captain Park carried the next armor plate, moving with careful steps. Each plate weighed over 40 kilograms, and the magnetic lifting aids they normally used would interfere with the quantum fields. They had to move everything by hand. Everyone remember, Do-young called out as he prepared another plate. The quantum fields are already starting to interact. If you feel dizzy or see any strange lights, step back immediately. The team worked in focused silence. They had practiced the placement sequence for 30 minutes, but practice couldn't fully prepare them for the reality. The air around the bomb seemed to shimmer, making it hard to judge distances. Several times, someone had to stop and close their eyes to avoid becoming disoriented. 15 plates placed, Su-bin announced after an hour. 22 remaining. Field strength at 40% of required level. Do-young wiped sweat from his forehead inside his helmet. The work was physically demanding, but they couldn't take breaks. Every minute mattered. He looked at the growing pattern of armor plates surrounding the bomb. The modified quantum fields made the plates glow with a faint blue light, creating a beautiful but terrifying display. Something's wrong, Su-bin suddenly said, her voice tense. The field strength is fluctuating. Captain Park froze in place, holding an armor plate. Cause. Su-bin studied her readings. The bomb's field is changing. It's like it's adapting to our containment attempt. Can we compensate? Jaya asked, already moving back from her position. We need to recalibrate each plate individually, Su-bin answered. But that will take at least 40 minutes, and we still have 22 plates to place. The countdown showed 1 hour and 15 minutes remaining. We don't have time to place the remaining plates and recalibrate everything, Captain Park said, carefully setting down her armor plate. Options. Do-young stared at the pattern of glowing armor plates. Something about the fluctuations seemed familiar. Then he remembered a training incident from 2 years ago, when a rookie soldier's armor had malfunctioned during a drill. "The bioelectric field," he said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. "What about it?" Su Bin asked. "2 years ago, I saw a suit malfunction because its quantum field generator wasn't properly calibrated, but the suit kept working because it was synced to the user's bioelectric field. The field adapted automatically to maintain protection." Su Bin's eyes widened as she understood. "You think we could use a human bioelectric field to stabilize the containment?" "Yes," Du Young said, "but it would mean someone has to wear a modified command suit and link directly to the field network. They would have to stay inside the containment pattern until the bomb detonates." A heavy silence fell over the cargo hold. Everyone understood what that meant. Whoever wore the command suit would be only meters away from the bomb when it exploded. Captain Park started to speak, but Du Young cut her off. "I'll do it. I know these suits better than anyone. I have the best chance of maintaining the connection." The countdown continued its relentless advance. 1 hour and 10 minutes remained. Su Bin worked quickly to modify the command suit while Du Young stood perfectly still. The cargo hold was silent except for the soft hum of equipment and the occasional beep from the countdown timer, which showed 50 minutes remaining. "The neural links have to be perfect," Su Bin explained as she adjusted the suit's internal systems. "Your bioelectric field will be the only thing keeping the containment stable." Captain Park watched the work with concern in her eyes. "Are you absolutely certain about this, Lieutenant Kim?" "Yes, Captain," Du Young replied. He tried to keep his voice steady, but his hands shook slightly. "I've worked with these suits for 3 years. I know how they respond to human bioelectric fields better than anyone else." Jaya approached with the helmet, its surface covered in new sensor arrays. "The radiation shielding is at maximum," she said, "but at this close range to the explosion." She didn't finish the sentence. Du Young nodded. Everyone knew his chances of survival were low. The command suit might protect him from the initial blast, but the quantum energies would be far beyond anything human armor was designed to handle. "Final suit modifications complete," Su Bin announced. "We need to start the integration process now." Captain Park stepped forward. "Lieutenant Du Young Kim," she said formally, "I want to note in the official record that you volunteered for this mission with full understanding of the risks. Your courage honors the United Earth Defense Force." Du Young straightened his back. "Thank you, Captain. But we're not done yet." The process of putting on the modified command suit was slower than usual. Each piece had to be connected precisely to ensure the bioelectric field would flow correctly. Su Bin checked every connection twice, her usual speed set aside in favor of absolute accuracy. "The remaining armor plates will be placed in sequence once you're in position," Su Bin explained. "Your bioelectric field should automatically stabilize their quantum fields as they're added to the containment pattern." Du Young took a deep breath as the final pieces of the suit locked into place. The helmet's heads-up display showed dozens of new readings he had never seen before. The suit felt different too. There was a subtle vibration that seemed to match his heartbeat. "Neural link initializing," Su Bin reported. "Du Young, you should feel a tingling sensation as the suit syncs with your bioelectric field." The tingling started in his fingers and spread up his arms. It wasn't painful, but it felt strange, like his whole body was falling asleep. The suit's systems responded, the quantum field generators humming to life. "Link established," Su Bin confirmed. "Field strength stable. Ready to begin final placement sequence." Captain Park put her hand on Du Young's armored shoulder. "We'll work as fast as we can. The less time you spend next to that bomb, the better." Du Young walked carefully to the center of the containment pattern. The bomb's quantum field was visible now, rippling through the air like heat waves on a hot day. He took his position and nodded to the team. "I'm ready," he said. "Begin final sequence." The countdown showed 40 minutes remaining. Du Young focused on keeping his breathing steady as his teammates began moving the remaining armor plates into position. Soon, he would be sealed inside the containment pattern with the most powerful weapon humans had ever encountered. He hoped his bioelectric field would be enough to keep the containment stable. If not, he wouldn't live long enough to know he had failed. The final armor plate slid into position with a soft click. Du Young stood at the center of the containment pattern, surrounded by glowing pieces of modified combat armor. The countdown showed 5 minutes remaining. All plates are in position, Subin announced, her voice tense. Quantum field strength at 98% of theoretical maximum. Captain Park spoke through the radio. Everyone clear the cargo hold immediately. Return to the Steadfast. That's an order. Ma'am, Jaya hesitated. We can't just leave him alone. You can, and you will, Du Young said firmly. The containment field is delicate. Having more people nearby could interfere with my bioelectric field. Through his helmet display, Du Young watched as his teammates reluctantly left the cargo hold. Only Subin remained, making final checks on her instruments. The suit's neural link is stable, she reported. Your bioelectric field is maintaining synchronization with all 37 armor pieces. She looked up at him. Du Young, good luck. After she left, Du Young was alone with the bomb. The quantum fields from the armor plates created strange patterns of light in the air around him. His suit's systems showed dozens of readings, all hovering at critical levels. 3 minutes remained. Lieutenant Kim, Captain Park's voice came through his radio. The Steadfast is at minimum safe distance. Status report. Du Young checked his displays. All systems functioning. The containment field is stable. He paused. Captain, if this doesn't work. It will work, she interrupted. Focus on your task, Lieutenant. The bomb's surface began to pulse with brighter light. The countdown passed 2 minutes, then 1 minute. Du Young's heart was beating faster, but the suit's systems automatically adjusted to match his changing bioelectric field. 30 seconds. The air itself seemed to vibrate. Through his helmet's display, Du Young could see the quantum field starting to twist in impossible ways. The armor plates glowed brighter, their fields straining against the growing power of the bomb. 10 seconds. Field stability at maximum, Du Young reported, his voice steady despite his fear. All plates responding to bioelectric control. 5 seconds. The light from the bomb became blinding. Du Young closed his eyes, but he could still see it through his eyelids. 3, 2, 1. The world exploded. Du Young felt the blast hit the containment field like a physical wall. His suit's neural link transmitted the sensation directly to his brain. It felt like trying to hold back an ocean with his bare hands. The quantum energies from the bomb crashed against the containment field in waves. Each wave felt like it would tear him apart, but the modified armor responded to his bioelectric field, strengthening the containment where it was weakest. Warnings flashed across his helmet display. The suit's systems were operating far beyond their design limits. The neural link burned like fire in his mind, but Du Young held on, focusing all his will on maintaining the containment field. Through the pain, he heard Subin's voice on the radio. The containment is working. Energy levels are dropping. The light began to fade. The pressure against the containment field lessened. Du Young's legs gave out, and he fell to his knees, but he kept the neural link active. He couldn't risk the field failing now. Finally, after what felt like hours but must have been only minutes, Subin spoke again. Detonation complete. Containment field holding. We did it. Du Young tried to respond, but no words came. The world spun around him, and darkness crept into the edges of his vision. The last thing he heard was Captain Park ordering emergency medical teams to the cargo hold. Then everything went black. The medical bay of the Steadfast was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. Du Young opened his eyes slowly, his whole body aching. The first thing he saw was Captain Park sitting beside his bed, reading a report on her datapad. "Welcome back, Lieutenant," she said, noticing he was awake. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." Du Young tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. The captain helped him take a sip of water. "The containment field," he managed to say. "Did it hold?" "Completely," she replied with a smile. "The explosion was fully contained. Not a single life was lost." Do-young relaxed slightly, then noticed something strange. He could still feel the neural link from the command suit, but it felt different. "The armor," he began. "There was an unexpected side effect," Captain Park explained. "The quantum energies from the explosion partially fused the armor plates to each other, and because of your neural link, they're still connected to your bioelectric field." Su Bin entered the medical bay, carrying several instruments. "The good news is that you're perfectly healthy," she said. "The bad news is that we can't separate the armor pieces without risking damage to the quantum field network. And since your bioelectric field is now part of that network, I'm stuck with it," Do-young finished. "For how long?" "Probably forever," Su Bin answered. "But there's more. The VEC have contacted us." Do-young sat up straighter, ignoring the pain in his muscles. "The VEC? Why?" Captain Park put down her datapad. "They were watching. The ship was a test. They wanted to see how different species would handle finding one of their quantum bombs." "A test?" Do-young couldn't believe what he was hearing. "They put millions of lives at risk for a test. The bomb was never meant to detonate at full power," Su Bin explained. "But they didn't expect anyone to try containing it. They especially didn't expect someone to use basic combat armor to do it." Captain Park stood up and faced Do-young formally. "The VEC were impressed. They've requested a meeting with Earth's leaders. They say anyone who can turn simple protection equipment into a quantum containment field is worth talking to." "So we passed their test?" Do-young asked. "With flying colors," the captain replied. "They've already shared some of their quantum field technology as a gesture of good faith. Their scientists are particularly interested in studying how your bioelectric field adapted to control the containment network." Jaya appeared at the door of the medical bay. "Sorry to interrupt, but the Earth Defense Command is calling again. They want to know when Lieutenant Kim will be ready for the award ceremony." Do-young looked confused. "Award ceremony?" Captain Park smiled. "The United Earth Defense Medal of Honor. The highest award we have. Though personally, I think saving millions of lives and making first contact with the VEC deserves something even better. I just did my job," Do-young said quietly. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Su Bin disagreed. "Not anyone would have thought of using armor quantum fields to contain a bomb. Not anyone would have volunteered to risk their life by staying inside the containment pattern. You did something extraordinary. And now," Captain Park added, "thanks to you, humanity has a chance to learn from one of the most advanced species in known space. The VEC say they've been watching humanity for years, waiting to see if we were ready for contact. You proved we were." Do-young looked down at his hands, still feeling the strange connection to the quantum field network. His actions had changed not just his own life, but potentially the future of human civilization. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," Captain Park said, "we prepare for a new chapter in human history, and you, Lieutenant Kim, will help write it."